Hello, my name is Germán Espinosa, and today I will talk you through Implicature in pragmatics. Language is much more than the literal meaning of words. In everyday conversations, people often communicate ideas indirectly, expecting others to understand what they really mean without saying it explicitly. This phenomenon is known as implicature, one of the central concepts in pragmatics. This concept was introduced by the British philosopher Paul Grice in 1975. He observed that in conversation, what is meant often goes beyond what is said. In other words, speakers frequently communicate additional meanings that listeners infer from context rather than from the literal meaning of words. Understanding implicature is important because it allows us to interpret hidden meanings, avoid misunderstandings, and communicate more naturally in social, academic, and professional situations. Implicature is the meaning that a speaker implies without expressing it directly. Instead of saying everything explicitly, speakers often leave part of the message unstated, expecting listeners to infer the intended meaning by considering the context, the situation, and their shared knowledge. Paul Grice proposed that successful communication is based on the cooperative principle. This principle suggests that speakers and listeners cooperate to make conversations meaningful and effective. To explain this, Grice identified four conversational maxims. These are quantity, which means give the right amount of information, quality, say what you believe is true, relation, be relevant, and manner, be clear and avoid ambiguity. When a speaker intentionally appears to break one of these maxims, the listener looks for an implied meaning. This hidden meaning is what we call an implicature. There are two main types of implicature. The first one is conversational implicature, which depends on the context and the relationship between the speakers. For example, if someone says, I have an exam tomorrow, after being invited to a party, the listener understands that the person is probably declining the invitation. On the other hand, we have conventional implicature, which comes from the meaning of specific words, such as but, yet, or therefore. For example, in the sentence, she's poor but honest, the word but implies contrast between being poor and being honest. Here we have some real life examples. Example 1. A. Could you lend me $1? B. I just spent everything paying for the party ticket. The implicature. Although B never says no, the listener understands that B cannot lend the dollar because they have no money left. The intended meaning is inferred from the context rather than from the literal words. Example 2. A. Did you like the food at the university bar? B. The soup was fine. The implicature. Although B only comments on the soup, the listener can infer that the rest of the food was probably not very good. If B had enjoyed the entire meal, they would likely have given more positive answer about the food in general. How implicature is used in everyday communication? Well, it is present in almost every conversation. People often communicate indirectly because it is more polite, more effective, or more socially appropriate rather than saying everything explicitly. For example, we use implicature when refusing invitations politely, or giving opinions without sounding rude, or making suggestions, or expressing criticism indirectly, among other occasions. Implicature is one of the most important concepts in pragmatics because it explains how people communicate meanings that go beyond the literal words they use. By understanding the cooperative principle, the conversational maxims, and the distinction between conversational and conventional implicature, we gain deeper understanding of how language works in real life.